Hello, today I will be discussing the Eschede Train Disaster. On June 3, 1998, a train run by Deutschbahn had derailed under an overpass bridge near Eschede, a village in Germany. This caused the destruction of the train's carriages and the bridge itself. The accident resulted in 101 fatalities and 88 people severely injured. What happened was that the steel tire of a wheel was dislodged into a cabin of the third passenger carriage. Because of this, the train derailed into the bridge in a zigzag manner. The main reason for the derailment was the wheel used. In the original design of the train, the wheels were of a block cast type, but passengers complained about the trains being noisy and jolty, so instead a wheel design with a rubber body under a steel tire was used. These types of wheels went through much more distortion and fatigue. Subsequent research also found the standards set for them were lower than what they should have been. The safety testing of the wheels was done in an unfit manner. Testing was done by hammering the wheel and inspecting the sound, but the rubber of the wheel muffled the vibrations and led to a lot of false positives. Up to 2 months prior to the accident, there were multiple conductors who submitted safety reports that went unheeded by Dutch Bond. And a week before the accident, there was a 0.7 millimeter distortion in the wheel, which grew to 1.1 millimeters the evening before, double the standard set. And this Dutch Bond just did not consider these wheel distortions a high priority. Now I'll move on to the ethics of this case. Ethical dilemmas being faced were by Dutch Bahn and their engineers they employed. Dutch Bahn had chosen to give in the comfort of passengers a greater priority than things that could actually affect their safety. They didn't think the problems with the wheels were of a pressing manner and even ignored safety reports of the train. The engineers had conducted their safety testing in an unfit manner. A basic understanding of the physics regarding the wheel should have meant an engineer would know the testing method to be unsuitable. Even before that, the engineers had decided on the wheels to solve one problem, but did not adequately consider the consequence of the solution. In 1996, German Railway was warned about fatigue issues in these types of wheels. Even after all this, the engineers were aware of issues with the wheels, but did not adequately press their concerns to Dutch Bond. The engineers had clearly breached the Professional Engineers Act. Their safety testing methods alone shows negligence, which is a breach of 72.2a. By a safer wheel design or maintenance, the accident could have been feasibly prevented. By not doing so, 72.2b the code was breached. This also led into breaking the code of ethics with 77.1 and 77.2 by clearly not acting with fidelity to the public needs and regarding their welfare as paramount. The engineers had known about the problems regarding the wheel, yet failed to do anything about it. This breaches 72.2c, which states a failure to correct or report a situation that may endanger the safety of the public. While some reports were made, 72.2f was breached by failure to clearly present the consequences of the problems to Dutch Bahn. A possible alternative approach the engineers working for Dutch Bahn could have taken was to simply not do the safety testing without adequate means. This approach would mean the engineers were not at fault with 72.2a of the code. Also, the engineers could have properly looked into and explained the consequences of the wheel in a detailed manner to convince Dutch Bahn that their use would be unsuitable for the trains. This would ensure that 72.2f of the code is not breached. And the issues with the wheels and their unsafe nature would need to be properly reported and then escalated to higher management or proper authorities. This would mean 72.2c of the Act isn't breached, and by taking all of these alternative approaches, the engineers will have seen to do their best at keeping in regard the public safety and welfare. Doing all that had just been mentioned would have been a more ethical response from the engineers. But another option that could have avoided all this was to not change the wheels from the original design as they had. A better understanding of the solution to their original problem should have been undertaken. This would have led to the realization that a safer alternative was required than the change in wheels. Now let's move on to looking at the case from a legal perspective. This case would be best examined under tort law, which deals with compensation from a defendant to a plaintiff whom they have wronged. For the case, the plaintiffs would be the victims of the accident and their families, the defendants would be Dutch Bahn and their engineers. There are three principles for the application of tort law. First, a duty of care must have been owed. Second, the duty of care was breached. And third, the breach resulted in harm. The precedence for tort law was set with the case of Donahue v. Stevenson. A duty of care was owed by Stevenson to provide Donahue with a safe drink. This duty of care was breached by Snail being in Donahue's drink, and she was harmed by then falling ill. The principles to tort law apply to this specific case too. It is clear that Dutch Bond and its engineers owed the victims and their families a duty of care by ensuring the trains were perfectly safe to ride on. They had breached this duty of care by the derailment of the train, which then led to harm by causing 101 deaths and 88 people to be severely injured. Based on tort law and the facts of this case discussed, it is reasonable to surmise that had they been tried in Ontario courts they would be found guilty. In fact, that is exactly how the German courts had found them to be also.